Here we go. Yeah, really. Who said that? So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Vice Chairman of Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club between 1982 and 1986, Doug Hope. So, guys, just to give you a bit of context, I do a Wolves podcast at Wolf Whistle, which has been extremely popular, but it got really popular when I interviewed Doug. And I interviewed Doug on a bit of a whim, really, because it's a fantastic story, and I really didn't know how it would be received. And it was one of the most listened to podcasts. You all listened to my lady wife earlier when she spoke about my daughter. Please give this man some respect and listen to Doug as well, because it's a fascinating story. So, Doug, we're going to start off. I believe some of your family were actually Wolves fans.
That's right. I grew up in Glasgow, but my mother came from Shrewsbury, and when I was a young lad, we used to come down in the school holidays and spend some time with the family there. And it was all talk about Wolves. You know, that was the great time when the original classic floodlit matches against the likes of Moscow Dynamo and Spartak and Hornred. The one I remember most was Hornred, because I remember listening to it on the radio and being thoroughly depressed because they were 2-0 down at half time.
Yeah.
And the elation when they won 3-2, I was fully indoctrinated into Wolves about the age of 8.
Wow. And your early career, Doug, obviously we're going to come on to how you become Vice Chairman of Wolves, but I believe you worked for a company, you were seconded to Wolverhampton.
Well, I worked for a tar company that had a branch of Wolverhampton. I was offered a transfer from Glasgow. It was either Edmonton and North London or Wolverhampton, so I came down here.
So you could have been at the Arsenal then?
I could have been, yeah.
And Derek Dugan, if you can remember right, cast your mind back, Derek Dugan, the enigmatic legend of a striker in the 70s, became a very, very good friend of yours, Doug. How did you actually meet the Duke?
Well, in those days, the discipline for footballers wasn't quite as it is now, so all the players, we used to see them out and about in pubs and clubs in the town, and there was the likes of Derek Dugan and Jim McCallion and Frank Monroe, people like that. You got to know them socially quite well. But I got to know Derek particularly well through a mutual friend, Roger Hipkiss.
Yes.
And we became pals. After the three used to hang out together, so that's how I got to know Derek.
So, guys, cast your mind back. If you remember, so the Steve Ball stand as it is now was originally the John Island stand. So we won the League Cup in 1980, but let's rewind a little bit. 1979, we built the stand for £2.3 million. So Wolves put a down payment of £500,000 for that stand and a 1.8 million loan. Now, back then, we all know the interest rates have gone up now, and our mortgages are near 5%, and we're all moaning. Interest rates then were between 11.2% and peaked in 1981 at 16%. If you remember the Molyneux Street, which is where the Steve Ball stand as it is now, 70 houses got knocked down, but it was a great cost for the football club, where it cost them 2.3 million for this stand. And that, Doug, is where the conflict between John Barnwell and Harry Marshall started.
Yes, there were difficult times. He was pulled in two directions, really, or the club was pulled in two directions. Harry had to balance the books, and he'd spent a lot of money on the stand. John Barnwell had come in as manager, I think it was the back end of 78, to replace Stanley Chambers. He'd done really well. And he won the League Cup in 1980, and he wanted to build a team. So he went out and bought a lot of players. He came, I think the club broke the world record twice in the same week. He sold Steve Daly to Manchester City for 1.3 million. And apparently, Harry Marshall, so the story goes, he went into John Barnwell's office and said, congratulations, I can pay some money off the stand. He said, well, I'm sorry, you can't, I need another 25 grand, you just bought Andy Gray. So that, is a bit of a joke, but at that time, it probably, if they had paid money off the stand, perhaps they wouldn't have got themselves into the trouble that they're in.
Yeah.
But, yes, there was a conflict. There was a lot of unrest amongst the supporters. there was always unrest amongst the shareholders. And I was a shareholder at the time, and Roger Hipkiss was as well. And as I say, there was a lot of unrest amongst the supporters, but Roger decided that he would call a shareholders meeting. And the idea of the shareholders meeting was to call an EGM to vote Harry Marshall out. And interestingly enough, that shareholders meeting, the first one, was in this very room on the 4th of May 1982.
Wow.
And it progressed from there, and then the emergency general meeting was held in the foyer of the stand, the John Island stand, and Harry was voted out on a show of hands. Because of the amount of shareholding he got, he was able to take a postal vote, which allowed him to override the vote by the vote for hands, show of hands. Afterwards, Roger challenged that vote because Harry only won it by about 104 votes, but it turned out that some dead men had voted and Roger wanted to challenge it, so rather than go to court, Harry decided to resign. And that was that, and Doug Ellis and Malcolm Finalizing were brought in, and everybody thought this was great. They were going to sort the club. They came in a blaze of glory, for want of a better word. And 2 weeks later, they took one look at the books and decided that it was all too much, and they called in the receiver. So it was Doug Ellis and Malcolm that called the receiver in the first place. And of course, after that, the club was in play and there for anybody to make an offer for if they chose to.
So what was so interesting, guys, is 2nd of July 1982, you can see the newspapers on the wall, the Express Star were first of all with the headline that Wolves have gone bust. Now bearing in mind, this is just 22 years, which isn't a long time, 22 years after Wolves had won the FA Cup in 1960. Doug's quite right, so it was Harry resigned on the 16th of July 1982, and it was Doug Ellis who Deadly Doug, who remembers Deadly Doug from the Villa? And he was the unlikely candidate to save the club with former goalkeeper Malcolm Finlayson. The Football League set a deadline of 30th of July 1982 for interested parties to put a package together to save the club, and you was one of the parties to put a package together, wasn't you, Doug?
Yes, prior to that, there was a lot of activity, but not very much action. Everybody thought that Doug Ellis and Malcolm would take over the club, but at that point, unfortunately for them, I think he thought by putting a receiver in, Doug Ellison talking about, that he could walk away from the debts, but the Football League threw a spanner in the works and basically said that the majority of the debts got to be paid before you kicked to football, so that having called the receiver in, it made the situation worse. There was 4 groups that were interested in buying the club. There was a chap called Anton Johnson, who was chairman of Rotherham at the time, and his vice chairman was a lad called Alistair Ward, who was from Wolverhampton, and Emlyn Hughes was the manager then. So Emlyn might have ended up as manager of the Wolves if they'd been successful, but they faded away. The other 2 groups that were interested were Ken Weldon. Ken Weldon had a group together that was backed by Sir Jack. He was playing a peripheral role, but he supported that group. And the other group was Doug and Malcolm.
Yeah.
We didn't get involved until probably about the 12th of July. I had a few drinks with Derek. We were talking about the World Cup. I was just come back from the World Cup in Spain, and I said to him that, a sad situation it was at the Wolves, and everybody was moaning about it. And I got a chap who I'd sold a car to 18 months before, and he said, well, if you ever find a property situation, give me a call, because I've got contacts that would be interested in anything. So I said to Derek, shall we have a meeting? We had a meeting, and that led to another meeting with a chap called Mike Rowland, who ran Allied Properties. He was the managing director. And eventually, I think on about the 12th of July, we were invited to meet the principals. So we went up to Manchester and we met the Bhatti brothers. So that was the 12th of July. And the deadline at that point was the 23rd of July. because I think about the 22nd of July, the receiver got an extension to make it the 30th. So
Yep.
we were on an even tighter schedule than we expected.
Because there was a danger that if the club didn't receive a backer and a saviour, that the ground would have been sold for development, and there was a developer ready to buy it, so Wolverhampton Wanderers might not have existed.
Well, on the 23rd, Alan Adam, who was the receiver's principal assistant, announced in the Express and Star, and the quote was, "Looks like the bulldozers are coming in. If the club's not safe, I've got a developer who's offered me £2 million to just buy the ground and sit on it and develop it as and when it's convenient to do so." So basically from the 22nd, we've got a week to type all the loose ends, and we managed to do that on the 30th of July.
So what's interesting, Mike Cornwell was the gentleman that introduced to Mike Rowland, John Starkey, who ran a business, Allied Properties, and that was under the ownership of Mahmood Bhatti and Mohammed Akbar Bhatti, which I'm sure you all know as the infamous Bhatti brothers. You met them around the 10th of July on an industrial estate at Manchester Airport.
That's right, that's when we were called up to meet the principals. They've got a company called Grosvenor Aviation that was run out of Manchester Airport, and they've got this luxurious porter cabin, is the only way you can describe it, and we went in there, we met them, and we spoke to them probably for about 3 hours. Well, I say we spoke to them, Derek spoke to them. He was Danny Blanchard, who used to say, you know, most of us kissed the Barney still where he swallowed it, you know, so he was a good pattern merchant, that's for sure. Anyway, after that, Mike Rowland and myself and John Starkey went to, 4 of us went to a restaurant, Four Seasons it was called, just a tail, just by the airport, and for a meal. And he was up and down all the time taking phone calls, so it became clear that what Derek had said had impressed the parties, and long story short, they decided that they would be interested in the deal. And we went forward to put the money up. We had a meeting prior to that because the whole thing hinged on the building of a supermarket. And we had a meeting with Wolverhampton Council, and because of the time factor, there was no way we could get planning permission. We did get an undertaking from the then leader of the council, John Bird, that he would back a planning application for the supermarket, and also for something called an urban development grant, which would have redeveloped the ground. The idea was to put a hotel on there because this was the only hotel of any consequence in Wolverhampton. There was nothing in the town centre, this place here. And it was agreed that we would apply for the urban development grant and the supermarket at the same time, and that they would go through and they would support it, but in the end they didn't.
So where the answer is now, Wolves own that land, and the meeting with the council was obviously, and it was all on nods and winks, wasn't it?
It was nods and winks. A lot was taken on trust, and unfortunately the people we trusted were untrustworthy. And within 6 months they'd done a complete U-turn and completely pulled the rug from underneath us, which was sad actually, because we'd done everything that we wanted to do. We'd got the club back in the first division. I say we had got it. Graham Hawkins was the manager, and he worked with Jim Barron, and we got some very a good team around us. A lot of it by accident. We had Frank Upton looking after the youth team. Sammy Chapman joined as chief scout, and we had a chap called Bill Twell, who was I always say he was like John Flea's character. He was the club doctor because we hadn't got a club doctor. And Dennis Conrad was a physio. Derek had gone on the radio and said, we haven't got physio, we're struggling. And Dennis turned up for an interview, and he arrived and saw Derek, and he says, well, you know, I've come for an interview. And he said, well, that's your interview, can you treat those 5 players? So he got the job. But we were very lucky that season, very fortunate to have a good blend of youngsters, which Graham and Jim got together. We had some good professionals, one of them sitting over there now leaves. He scored 18 goals for us that season, got us over the line.
Yes, big round of applause, Melly.
we had a big boost, and everything went right the first season. And just as we were enjoying what we tried to achieve, or what we had achieved, things started to go pear-shaped.
So, we've jumped the gun a little bit. I want to speak now a very important moment in Wolves history, and this is obviously why we're here today, and this is why the club's here today. 30th of July, the receivers were in control, Pete Marwick and Mitchell in Birmingham, your consortium. So let's look at the bids. Doug Ellis, he put a £1.65 million bid in for the Wolves. Ken Weldon, who was Walsall chairman, put a £1.8 million bid in. This was blind bids, by the way. Anton Johnson, who was the Rotherham chairman, was supposed to turn up with a cheque but never arrived, and the winning bid was £2,050,000 by yourself and Derek and the Bhatti brothers.
We thought, because of what he said about the Bulldogs and the £2 million bid, I mean, it could have been a bluff, but we thought, if we're going to buy it, let's get stuck in and buy it, and we bid it, bid £2,050,000, and we were successful in getting it.
And what was so interesting, the minute you put that £2 million bid in, you had a call from the Inland Revenue, didn't you, Doug?
No, it didn't quite work out that way. It was about a week later that I had a call from the Inland Revenue wanting to know where I got the £2,050,000.
A check goes tax returns.
So that was interesting, you know. But as I came back, we came back here actually after we had the meeting at Pete Marwick's office in the Commander Suite in there, and got home about 10 o'clock, and my wife said to me, "You've had a busy day." I said, "Yes, I have actually, yeah." I said, "How do you know that?" She said, "Oh, you just knocked the Falklands War off the lead item at News at 10. You just paid £2 million that I didn't realise that we had for the football club. And any chance of a new car, you know. So,
I mean,
interesting day.
It wasn't you just the Inland Revenue and your wife. The Football League required a £100,000 bond. If Doug and if Derek Dugan and the Bhatti brothers hadn't put up that £100,000, the Football League wasn't going to let Wolves continue with the fixtures, was they, Doug?
Well, what happened the Thursday night, we agreed £2,050,000. They said, come in at 9 o'clock, we'd up the ice and cross the T's, so that's what we did. But during the course of the day, there got about 17 lawyers up from London and accountants, because they had to check all the conveyancing for the John Island stand, because there were 70 houses demolished, and it was a question of making sure everything was right. So we were backwards and forward. They were ensconced in the Grand Hotel, and we were at Pete's offices down there. And everything was sorted at 4:30. And at that time, there was a phone call came in, and everything was agreed. But the Football League says, well, we want the directors to guarantee the fixtures. And basically they wanted £50,000 each. So I looked at Derek and we said, basically we've come this far, so we guaranteed the fixtures. And the deal went through just 3 minutes before Friday.
So the deadline was the 30th of July 1982, 5 p.m. and Doug and Derek saved the club at 4:57 p.m. I mean, that's amazing. Sorry, you don't need to give a round of applause, guys. Come on! So, then the Bhattis got involved. Now, what's interesting, the Bhatti brothers, obviously, all this was hinged on the proviso that the land would be sold for a supermarket. The Bhatti brothers asked you to put up then £150,000 personally for 10% of shares, but you never even got that, did you, Doug?
No, we did a guarantee. We didn't actually have to write a cheque for that, but we agreed that we would do that, yeah, but that never came to pass.
And you never got the 10%, did you, Doug?
We didn't get the 10%, but they didn't get 150,000.
So, Wolverhampton Wanderers, so the club is now Wolverhampton Wanderers 1986 Limited.
82.
Now, sorry, it is now 86. Sorry, now it's Wolverhampton Wanderers 1986 Limited. But back then, it was Wolverhampton Wanderers 1982 Limited for 4 years. And it was a shelf company that a name change, Simpson Manufacturing.
Yes, it was just a company that was bought off the shelf that was used as a vehicle to to buy the club. Interestingly enough, Wolves has gone bust twice before, in 1907 and 1923.
No one talks about that, they don't.
They don't give it. I don't know if anybody that was there.
There's probably a few in here, actually, who was there back then.
That's right, yeah.
But the Bhatti brothers, guys, there's a guy here, Bish, stand up, Grand Bishop, where are you? Bish at the back. If you look on your brochure tonight, there's some kids and some adults holding up some Bhatti outside. Actually, Bish, he's one of them guys. Now, believe it or not, it's a true story. The Bhattis had a lot of bad press, but at one point there was I think it was £8,000 a month or a week to keep the club afloat.
Yes, they gave an undertaking to keep the club in business for 4 years and to basically pay the club's debts. And obviously, to start with, they were quite happy to invest in the club, and they always criticised and told people say that they bought it purely as a property investment, which it was, but initially the whole keeping of the club together was the integral part of it.
Yeah.
To say that they bought it just to wreck it would be completely inaccurate.
Absolutely.
If you take a step back, I mean, that's obvious. But when I think we started to notice about the Christmas time that things weren't going quite well. Mike Rowland would come back with a long face, so we'd had a meeting with the council. And I'd been to it was either a Rotary Club or a business club or Chamber of Commerce, something like that, to basically try and say, well, this is what we wanted to do. And I expected to probably be welcomed, or if not welcomed, at least listened to it. It was quite clear that there was a hostile attitude from what I would call the Wolverhampton establishment, who I think they felt that outsiders had taken the club's jewel, the town's jewel in the crown. And I think they felt that, if they got their act together, the club could have stayed locally, because in those days, clubs were pretty parochial. They were owned by people locally, and I think this was the first time there was an owner that was an outsider.
Yeah, so I asked you a question during the podcast, Phil, and I put it in the book, and I was quite honest in this question. Back at the time, Enoch Powell had made, just before, the Rivers of Blood speech, and Enoch Powell was an MP for Wolverhampton South West. Now, arguably, there could have been a racial connotation as to why the Bhatti brothers weren't given planning permission, and the following owners subsequently were. You denied that, but
well, I don't think the only people that can say that with any certainty are the people that try to undermine us.
Yes.
I mean, basically, when it became clear that what they did actually, John Bird, who had agreed to support us, he just moved the goalposts, for want of a better expression. He says, if you don't develop the ground first, then we're not going to consider planning permission for the supermarket. But that effectively put all the finances the wrong way around. So from about the February of '83, we'd got Wolverhampton Council on one side, we'd got Allied Properties on the other, feeling extremely miffed that they'd put about £4 million into the club at that time, and all they got basically was a football ground. They've got no way to sort of make the money work for them. I mean, they went into it as a commercial venture. But at that point, that's when things started to go wrong. Although we managed to get over the line into the first division later in the season. But it was from about January, February, when, as I say, John Bird and the council moved the goalpost.
And what was quite interesting was that the owners of the Manda Centre at the time, I mean, now if you look at St John's and so many retail parks outside of the city centre, the owners of the Manda Centre were massively against the supermarket where Asda is being built by the Molyneux.
Well, the situation was there was a local town plan that said that retail, there couldn't be any, there was a presumption there would be no retail outside the ring road, which was a silly idea because, it's probably the only town in Britain where the ring road runs through the middle of the town, so it's difficult, to cram everything in there. But they use that as an argument to say, you can't have the planning and that. But the council had put that rule in place, and if they wanted to, they could have changed it. And obviously 18 months after we left in 1986, that's exactly what they did. And what we see there, and it's still there to this day, is the Asda store, which is what we wanted. I think the Gallagher's well, I worked out that they took probably several £1 million profit out of it and then left Sir Jack to then put his money into the club, and it went from there. But the way we were treated compared with how it was subsequently treated, obviously, they had a lot more time to negotiate a deal that made sense, that wasn't basically a handshake, and so that's the way things worked out.
So back to the football side, 81-82 ended in relegation from the then First Division. 82-83 we got promotion at the first attempt, QPR won the league, we come runners up. Derek Dugan, I quote, rallied the troops, and these were Derek's words: "Since I left, Wolves has not been run in the best interest of the players and the fans. I hope in some way we can give back to the people, as without them there is no club." Graham Hawkins was the surprise choice of manager in 82-83. I want a big round of applause for Manning the room. So the opening day of the season we beat Blackburn 2-1. Melly scored 2 headers. Big round of applause for Mel. But interestingly, before that season, the Dugan had a massive sacking spree. Phil Shaw, who I believe was the commercial director, Jack Taylor, Ian Greaves, who was the manager, was gone. And I think one of the national newspapers put a cartoon with a revolving door, didn't they, Doug?
They did this, and the only person that gets some sack was himself.
That's about right. So 82-83, you had gone, which is quite interesting, to York for pre-season and shared a hotel with Leicester City and their chairman, and some of the Targets guys back in the day: Mick McCarthy, Mickey Ginn, David Seaman, Ashley Grimes, and a certain Leicester centre forward. You agreed a deal to sign him, Gary Lineker.
We had. Mike Rowland had said that I probably should put £1 million in for players, and obviously that's before things started to go wrong. And Graham was asked to produce a list of players that he wanted, and he came in with the players that you mentioned. And Gary Lineker was top of the list because those 2 games against Leicester were the only ones that we really lost, and Gary's pace and everything was phenomenal at the time, and we agreed a deal in principle. He'd agreed to come in principle with Terry Shipman, who was the chairman of Leicester at the time, £110,000. But unfortunately the money turned up. But it could have changed the course of history, but there you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Dale Rudge tells me a fantastic story about that trip in New York, because John Burridge was there, and there was a strongman contest on the stage. So John Burridge got up, because we all remember John could work on his hands, and Dale Rudge tells me that he actually got up on the stage, stark naked, walked on his hands, and then kicked the judge in the face because he slipped over, apparently.
I must have missed that one. But I didn't miss the one when we got promotion, which was the final match against Newcastle. And in the warm-up, John Burridge came out dressed as Batman. And I'll never forget the expression on Kevin Keegan's face at that day, because he was sitting there, standing there in the goals, in a Batman suit. I mean, you couldn't make it up, but he was running his own budget.
Would it be an argument to say, Doug, that it actually went too well at the start with the promotion?
Well, you could argue if we consolidated in the second division, things might have gone better, but who knows?
Yeah. Now, understandably, the Bhatti brothers stopped putting money in. And we spoke about this and we joked, Doug, and there's the old analogies and stories of the carpet fitter not getting paid, and even the milkman that didn't get paid.
Well, the carpet fitter actually was Harry Marshall's day. There was a
Right.
company called R&W Carpets that carpeted the foyer here, and I think he was owed about 2,400 quid. But I think that was Harry's day, so they can't blame us for that one.
Yeah.
But the milkman story was one day there was no money in the petty cash, and he wouldn't leave any milk till he got 27 quid, so the lads had to have a whip round for that. But that was just a bit of bad luck, because nobody was there to put the hand in the pocket, but they had a whip round. That's the milkman story.
I mean, guys, look at the club we've got today. 30,000 seater stadium, Fosun, a conglomerate of billionaires that own the club, and you know the lads are having a whip round for the milk. It's just incredible. The PFA were actually very helpful at the time, weren't they, Doug?
After things were going seriously wrong, particularly towards the end of '85, basically we were on our own. Bhatti said, well, I'm out at the end of the season anyway, all the directors have got to try and find some money where we can, and we all put up guarantees. And some local businessmen helped us, a chap called Glenn Wetton, he helped us, a chap called Robert Cooper. And the most unlikely person of all to help us was a chap called Peter Coates, who was chairman of Stoke City. And he lent us £100,000, which was a big help. That was arranged by Eric Wood, who'd been on good terms with him. So the help was not coming from the Wolverhampton business community. I mean, it was very difficult. But Gordon Taylor was very helpful as well, the PFA. I reached an arrangement with him whereby it was important to pay the players' wages. If we haven't got the wages, I'd ring Gordon up and we'd borrow the money against future TV revenue, and he helped us out on several occasions. So those were the people that helped us, and we had some really good staff that put up with all the flack as well. We had John Sutherland, who was the secretary, who'd been there, Doc Woodbridge, and of course Keith Pearson.
Yes.
Keith was he was one of these guys who was a bit dour, but he'd come in every day and he said, well, this is what we've got and this is what we've got to pay. So at least you could keep on top of the situation.
Yeah.
And it was sad to see that we lost him earlier this year.
And there was a lot of flack aimed at the director's box. So you'd be sitting in the director's box at games, and there was a lot of flack aimed at you, wasn't there?
Yes, I think we were criticised on 1 or 2 occasions. Yeah. It was worse actually when we went to the away games. I can't remember who it was, but you'd arrive and your car gets around and people would want to have a chat. But for the most part, they were quite good natured. They were upset and angry and frustrated, and who could blame them? You could see the club spiralling out of control. Yeah. They could see no light at the end of the tunnel. And fans, I mean, all they're interested in the football club they could be proud of. And it was just going pear-shaped, but what was going on behind the scene, obviously they didn't know, and really didn't care, and why would they?
And another option for the club financially, so do you remember when they used to train at Castlecroft? So there was an option of developing houses on the Castlecroft training site and moving the training ground to a 6-acre site that you would purchase, Doug, just off the Cannock Road.
Yes, this was in the last, sort of from about Christmas '85 to the end of May '86. It was important that we got to the end of the season. We were fighting off winding up petitions, and John Bird would fight one off. One would be adjourned and one thing and another, and then he'd come out with another one. And eventually we got the council's winding up petitions pushed into after May when the season finished. And what I could never understand was, although he claimed that he wanted to save the club, he was doing exactly the opposite, because if the club had been wound up in the middle of the season, there would have been no club, because what would have happened, the fixtures wouldn't have been fulfilled, which would automatically meant that it would have been out of the league. And, the effect of what he was trying to do was just be on the pill. But anyway, that's the way it was. And we managed to get the council's winding up petition adjourned until May. I think this was about the end of March. And we were sitting thinking, that we managed to make it over there. And of course the next day we get a letter from the Inland Revenue. So we have £169,000 for your PAYE, please. So that was an interesting day. And I didn't get much sleep that night. I think I woke up at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I thought, well, we managed to push the council situation forward, but the Inland Revenue is a different kettle of fish. So it was down in Worthing where the enforcement officer came from. So I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I thought, I'll go and see if I can appeal to the better nature. And it wasn't a good start because the man's name on the letter was Mr. Pratt. But when I got down there, he could have been nicer. He said, well, nice cup of tea and a biscuit, what's your problem? I said, well, we've got the situation, I know we owe you the money, but if we can push the they're winding up petition beyond May, things will get resolved, because it was obviously going to get resolved that summer anyway. And at that point, I got an offer from a property company to buy the offices at the back of the John Island stand, £350,000. I showed him that, and he said, okay, well, if we can have a couple of guarantees, you can have the 6 weeks. But the contrast between the inland revenue and Wolverhampton Council was quite astonishing, really.
There was an option to sell the ground to the council and lease it back, but because the relationship with the council was that poor, it never happened, did it?
That's right, yeah.
So did you add to that?
Well, we asked them, I mean, if you can see the press coming from the time, we said the obvious situation was that the council were to assist us in some way. They offered the Anton Johnson Consortium £200,000 to support the club when we initially took it. We didn't know about that at the time, we found out about it later. And we asked if that could be put forward towards us, but there was nothing forthcoming. They just wanted us out, and they didn't really care how they got us out. And as I say, if the club had gone bust mid-season, that was the most important thing. We got to the end of the season. But and then of course the receiver got called in middle of May '86.
That's right. So you hold on to the middle of May 1986. Lloyds Bank, it was officially appointed receiver for Wolverhampton Wanderers 1982 Limited. That's why it's now Wolverhampton Wanderers 1986 Limited. The Gallagher brothers took over, fronted by decadent and Jack Harris.
That's right, yeah.
Planning permission, and once again this is the point I made earlier, was eventually granted to the Gallaghers when they sold the land to Asda and obviously made quite a few quid off it. Was it for you? Was it quite a sour moment? Yes, it was great for the club. But was it quite a sour moment that you didn't get the planning permission, Doug?
Well, yes, of course it was. I mean, everything we wanted and were denied was given to the 86 companies.
Yeah.
The answer, as I say, is living proof that they preferred the situation then to when we were there. Which, if they'd gone along with what the original deal was, then things would be different.
And also, Doug, you was owed money, Derek was, Roger Hickey's was, and I believe there was at one point £50,000 put in to pay the players' wages.
Yes, that was part of it. I mean, we put various guarantees in, as I said, we got money from where we could, and obviously we borrowed it to get against, one chap had against future use of the box, he paid for his box 3 years in front. Yeah. And, we just had to scrub and scrape. But the most important thing was to get a team on the pitch.
Yes.
And of course, they were losing every week. The crowds were down to about 4,000 or 5,000. I think we're down to about 3,800 was the lowest crowd. And the sort of callous humour was, if it gets any worse, we're going to have to announce the crowd changes to the team. And that was the situation we were in.
And the Bhatti brothers do get a lot of stick, and because people have still got they've got it in their head that they wanted to sell the ground and turn it into a supermarket or develop it, which wasn't the case. I've actually wrote to the Bhatti brothers to obviously get them on the podcast or in the book, which obviously they haven't been in touch. Do you still keep in touch with either of the Bhatti brothers?
I haven't spoken to Akbar for probably 20 years, but I spoke to about 5 years ago. He rang me up about something which I forget what it was, but it was just a brief conversation. I think he's out in the Middle East now. I think
Okay.
He's based out there.
Got you. And for you, Doug, what was it like to be involved with the club at that time? Obviously you said that stories about Honved and Spartak Moscow. It must have been a sense of great pride that you eventually got to be vice chairman of this great club.
Well, it was an extraordinary honour. It was just so sad the way things turned out. But I never expected it when I was an 8-year-old in Shrewsbury hearing these stories about how Major Butler used to feed the Wolves players raw meat and things like that, which when you're 8 years old is quite impressive.
Yeah. And you actually met Princess Diana, I believe?
Yes, she turned up just after the Bradford fire. She was visiting, I think it was a crypt in Wolverhampton. She paid to Royal Bradley Crystal. We got a phone call one day, and I thought it was a wind up. I said, do you mind if we land a helicopter on the pitch? One of the royal family would like to come And I said, well, yeah. Once I realised it wasn't a wind-up, it took me about 0.5 seconds to say, yeah, of course you can.
Brilliant.
And she came and met us all. Unfortunately, I mean, we gave her 2 tracksuits for William and Harry, but unfortunately they ended up supporting Aston Villa, so that didn't work out.
And Derek was a good friend of yours to the end, really, and you was actually pallbearer at Derek's funeral.
I was, yes. There was Derek's brother, his 2 sons, myself and Dave Wagstaff.
Yeah. And what was Derek like as a person? Because in close quarters, Doug, you know him pretty much better than anyone.
It was complicated. I mean, he was a man of great kindness. He could fly off the handle for no reason at all and be quite bolshy. But then I remember one situation where there was a player with Ayr United who'd been injured at the game, and Ayr United run up and said, could you send us a shirt or something for a raffle? And he said, a bit better than that. And he drove up to Ayr United, he gave a speech, and it was like his death the next morning. So a man of extremes, I suppose, we would say. But he was very, very complicated, but an interesting chap.
And I believe that Danny died, or the day before he died, you'd been with Danny, hadn't you?
Yes, we'd been to, I think we'd been to Bentlands in Castle, and we had a bit of lunch, and I dropped him off. I would normally have gone in for a drink, but he said he felt a bit tired, so dropped him off at the end of his road, and the next morning he died in the night. He wanted to go in, I think he was watching a Ricky Hatton fight on the TV, and he rang his lady friend then, and basically said, I'm in a bad way, and by the time, he died then shortly afterwards.
I've got my own story about Derek. My dad had a car balloting place in Wolverhampton in the 90s called Ken Clean, and my dad hated football, but Derek Dugan come in, and my dad said, look, Derek Dugan's coming, this is his car. And I was like, I'll clean it, Dad, I'll clean it. And I remember cleaning his car, and he was washing back £5, which was probably half of my wages for the day. And I cleaned his car, because it was Derek Dugan's car. Oh my God, I was everything. I was in the booth, I was just cleaning everything. And when he come back, he had to pay my dad £5, and he went, listen son, he says, I haven't got a £5 on me, will you have 2 signed books? I was like, of course I will. So he gave me his 2 books signed, and then my dad gave me the biggest bollocking ever, asking for his £5, which he duly deducted from my wages. But what was interesting was, the dude, bless him, he used to have boxes of books in his car, which almost ended up as a currency.
Yeah, well, yes, he was good at writing books, Derek was. He wrote one called How Not to Run Football, and then he wrote the same book, republished again, How Not to Run Football 25 years on.
Yes.
An extra supplement in it, yeah.
Bless him. And you still got the Wolves today, Doug. We've got you here today, and listen, everyone in this room can be forgiven for not knowing who Doug is and not recognising him. Does anybody recognise you when you get to the Molineux, and do they know that the role that you played?
No, very rarely. Sometimes, but not very often. Yeah.
Brilliant. 4
of us go and sit together and we watch the game.
Keep out of the way.
That's right, yeah. Well, we don't keep out of the way, we just... They're just like going back to being fans,
Well, guys, what a fascinating story. Like I said, you look at the club now, and listen, if it wasn't for this man and Derek and the Bhatti brothers, and whichever way you look at it, you've heard the truth tonight. We might not have had a football club today. Yes, it could have gone into other hands, but it also could have gone to the wall, and we could have had nothing. We're going to come back in about 10 minutes for a Q&A, so please think of some questions for Doug. He will ask anything. But a big round of applause for a man who's played a big role in our history, Doug Howard.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks, everyone. I hope you found that interesting.
So guys, we're back in 10 minutes.